Hi gorgeous! Happy Frugal Friday to you. One of the most popular questions that I have been getting asked lately is, how do those cheap cosmetic sponges perform, and could you do a test with them? Absolutely! You know I love doing tests like this. And these are ridiculously cheap. I mean, they are the very definition of frugal. This is not a great example per se because I ended up getting these at Walgreens just at the last minute, but you can typically get these at Walmart, Dollar Tree stores for like $1 for 50, sometimes 100, which comes out to about 2 cents, 1 penny per sponge. Hey! So I'm putting these to the test for you in today's video. I'll be showing you a side-by-side application using one sponge dry and one sponge wet, so you can see the application and decide for yourself if these are worth checking out. Before we get started, if you're interested in anything I'm wearing on my eyes today, I will have everything listed for you below. The way I'm going to conduct this test, it's Friday, can't talk to save my life, is I'm going to be using one of the sponges dry and the other one wet. So this one has been completely immersed in water, and you can already see how much bigger the wet one is compared to the dry one. Products I'm using in today's demonstration are Maybelline's Fit Me Concealer and the Flower Liquid Foundation. I'm working on an updated battle of the drugstore concealers. If you remember that video from last year, the one that's like a year old, yeah, I'm working on an updated version of that, so that will be coming soon. And on this side, I'm using the wet sponge to blend the product in. So far, so good. I don't see any issues with it. Really soft, of course. I mean, it's a piece of foam. Although, you know, some pieces of foam can be pretty tough. Gets in really nicely underneath the eyes. I like that. And you can turn it around and use the bigger side too. One of the things that I am noticing with this wedge is that it's a little harder to get into areas right here around the eye, those really tight areas, simply because this is so flimsy compared to something like the Beauty Blender, which has that pointed tip, but there's a lot of structure behind it to support it, whereas this is just flimsy. And that's my only gripe so far. But this is the completed side with using the damp cosmetic wedge. Pretty good results, I feel like, for a $1 piece of foam. Not even $1 though. I mean, when you break it down, they come out to something like 2 cents a piece. Ridiculous. And on this side, I'm using the dry sponge. And I may get some questions about, why are you using wet versus dry? Personal preference, really. I just wanted to see if there's a difference in using these cosmetic wedges. Goodness, it's a flub kind of day. That's the kind of day that we're gonna have today. Like I was saying, I just want to see if there's a difference in using the sponge wet or dry. And they say that when you use the sponge wet, supposedly it soaks up less product while you're using it. So at the end of this also, I'll compare what each of the sponges look like side by side, and we'll see if that is true or not. Okay, and I'm noticing a difference already with using the dry sponge and getting in around the eye, like I had mentioned with this eye over here. It's a little easier when it's dry to get in around the eye. Obviously, that makes sense. If it is wet, I'm sure it's gonna make the sponge a little more flimsy. So that could be why it was a little more difficult on the other side for me. And those are the final results. Wet sponge, dry sponge. Can you tell the difference? I can tell a little bit of a difference just in the application process. It was a lot easier using the wet sponge on this side than it was with the dry sponge, except for the under eye area. And I do feel like it looks a little better blended by using the sponge wet on this side. But what do you think? And comparing the sponges at the end here to see which one soaked up more product, I do feel like the wet one absorbed less by comparison. What do you think? Now, just like the Real Technique sponge or your regular beauty blenders, these do wash up pretty well. But I will say that depending on which concealers and foundations you're using with them, and depending on the type of sponge that you get here, they do tend to stain a lot more easily, obviously. But by the same token, if you have been putting off getting a Real Technique sponge because you're afraid of bacteria building up in your sponges, these are great because you can use them one time and at 2 cents a pop, just throw them out and get a new one fresh the next day. So no need to worry there. Let me know if you use these currently or if you are considering using them now, or what you thought about them in the application demo that I shared with you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you again next week.